You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
What's up, dude? Welcome to Out of the Blank podcast, man. I'm so grateful that you're willing to take some time and be able to talk to me and I guess just enjoy a good old conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful that you're able to take me.
So, Michael, we met through a mutual friend, someone I've had on my podcast who does a Disney podcast, Bryce Bankard. And, you know, I kind of want to get what you kind of do in your life and your kind of thoughts on everything. And, you know, this is just a conversation. You know, you talk to me, I talk to you. Whatever you want to ask me. Whatever I want to ask you, hopefully I can ask you.
Yeah, sure. That works.
What do you do professionally, Michael?
Professionally, I am an animator. My degree is in animation for film and broadcast, so that's what I do professionally.
Whoa. So wait, you what type of animation do you do? Do you do like CGI computer type stuff, or do you do drawings and?
No, I'm part of the dying breed of 2D animators.
2D animators, yeah. Some of the best cartoons out there are 2D animation, let me tell you.
Yeah.
What made you want to decide to chase down something like this?
It's funny. I watched Aladdin when I was a kid with my grandpa Kenny, and I wanted to go see Agrabah, and he took me to Disney, and it wasn't Agrabah, and I told him, no, I want to go to Agrabah. And he's like, well, those are cartoons, and I'm like, well, what's that? I didn't think that I couldn't tell the distinction between, cartoons and real people. I thought Aladdin really lived somewhere. And he said, no, people get paid to make that stuff. And I said, people get paid to make that stuff.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You thought Aladdin was like, that was a real live thing? Like that was someone actually alive flying on a magic carpet?
I know it sounds silly, but, a lot of kids also believe in Santa, so.
What do you, wait. What do you mean believe in Santa? Santa's real, bro. Santa's real.
Well, I didn't believe that, that the cartoon was real. Like it would pop out and actually, like there was cartoon people, but what I did believe in is that Aladdin was a real person. That Agrabah actually existed.
Oh, that there was a person out there that might have a different name, but is a type of Aladdin, some type of prince out there that does have a magic carpet and does have a genie that grants him wishes.
Right.
That's not ridiculous at all. I think people try and find the fantasy in life, whether it's finding out along the road. Like I lived my whole life thinking Michael Jordan had AIDS, and then someone told me no, that's Magic Johnson. I'm like, you're telling me for the past 21 years I've been thinking Michael Jordan has AIDS and he doesn't have AIDS? They're like, no. I'm like, so my life is a lie? They're like, yeah. Well, now you can fix it. I'm like, no, I'm already committed. I'm going deep into it now. I'm going to keep on going and saying it. And they're like, but why are you doing that? I'm like, I've lived a lie. I can't come to the realization of things. And the best part I think about animation is that it gives you so many aspects and so many things that you can kind of escape from reality in a way, which I believe is the benefit of cartoons, the benefit of slipping into video games, the benefit of doing these child type things that adults consider just ridiculous or little toys and things. But as we see now in the world, people are becoming more diverse and diving into the gaming culture, diving into this I guess reality that they consider would be stereotypical nerd type lifestyle, but it's not becoming a nerd lifestyle anymore. It's becoming open to everyone because I feel like everyone's escaping from this world we live in.
Oh, that's so true. When I was a kid, watching what I used to watch, you'd consider me a geek, and now it's like everybody does, and there's no such thing as a geek anymore. And yeah, I always think, I'm like, man, if I had just been born 10 years earlier.
Right? Yeah, like if I would have lived in this time, it's like the good life of pocket protectors and black rim glasses. It's funny because that's the stereotypical nerd. If somebody says nerd or geek, you think of the pocket protector guy with a bunch of pens in there, flattened down hair. It looks like it's just soaking wet, kind of just down, slick. And living like this kind of geeky lifestyle. Like, I like to collect different types of bugs. This is the Arctic bug. And it's like, that's not what it is anymore. It's becoming open to everyone. People you would think that would be a jock, someone that would be 100% into sports, like, hey, bro, I'm not into that kind of nerdy shit, you know? Someone that would think like that is now taking the time to play video games and kind of influence themselves in a way with these types of things, whether it's from Guitar Hero or, watching animations such as old Disney flicks or, just enjoying a good old cartoon show. And I think that's awesome because I feel like we all need that time to unwind and kind of go back to what we can consider being a child or being a kid, just for even for an hour, dude. It's so important to our health.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when it comes to animation and stuff, take me kind of through the step-by-step process. Because, I mean, you live in Florida, right?
Yes, I do.
So that's a kind of a big animation kind of spot, especially with Disney World being down there and everything like that.
Yeah, Orlando's pretty hot with that stuff. All right, well, I'll give you a bit of brief history about me. I can't go into like immense detail. There's so much, but I started my career. I graduated animation school. And I started my career working for a company called SVM Studios, Southern Video and Music Studios. And that was an adventure. Let's just say that was an adventure, I worked for them for a while, and they did a bunch of commercials for a bunch of big-name people. Like, they did commercials for, I think, Red Bull and Keebler and all those people, and I worked in their storyboarding department. So in my professional career, I've only ever been a storyboard artist or an inker.
Okay, a lot of people out there listening don't really understand when it comes to a storyboard what that is. So that's, if I'm correct in saying, that's the process of kind of a rough draft version before the final edited version, right? Like the ideas and thoughts being tossed around in the boardroom.
Right. That's when we break down the script into actual timing, so that like, let's say the writer gives us a script and we break it down into every single scene, and then we time it out. And in storyboard, we know what we can take out, what we can keep, and give you a good estimation of the runtime.
That's very crucial to developing a cartoon, because that's also where you can make your adjustments.
Yes. It's also the biggest pain in the butt too, because in storyboarding is when, especially when you're working with somebody who has a commercial, who wants to make a commercial, you're not working with another studio, you're working with a client. And storyboarding is when you take their idea, and the problem when you have a client is that the client has such a big idea in their head of how they want their commercial, but they don't have the budget for it.
Or so they have
commercial,
I'll say, or they don't have a way of kind of putting their thoughts onto paper, which they look to someone like a storyboard animator or some type of job in that position.
Right. That's what I do. So say you or that's what I did. Say you have an idea. You sell, say, glow in the dark socks. Okay, you yourself, Robbie, you sell glow in the dark socks, right?
Okay.
And you have an idea for a commercial, and you say to yourself, "Well, I see myself in Eternia with He-Man." I'm just giving out an outlandish idea, right?
I'm already buying it. First of all, who doesn't want glow in the dark socks?
And He-Man has to find the socks of mystic truth, and those are the socks that we have. And he's going to fight Skeletor, and Skeletor's going to cast a spell, but then He-Man's going to wear the socks and beat Skeletor. Something stupid, really, really stupid, right? You have this idea in your head, and then you come to me, you talk to me about your idea. First of all, I tell you, okay, that we can do that. It may go over 30 seconds, and the price for the animation is going to be about $300 per second. So there's your budget right there. And then if you want like blasts and waves and fight scenes and all that, that's going to cost you extra, because we got to bring in CGI artists, we got to bring in all sorts of people and everything. And at the end of the day, they're like, "Well, how much is it going to cost me?" And I flip them the bill. I'm like, "It's going to be $29,000."
Holy.
Yeah, and then they would look at me and be like, "What do you have for $3,000?" And I said, "Well, we have a white background and a little 2D character in black and white who comes out and says, 'Hey, buy these glow in the dark socks.'"
Yeah, a lot of people don't even realize that the average American 2D TV series like The Simpsons or something, that's between $600,000 to $700,000 per episode.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And when you have like a big CGI production that requires, Optimus Prime transforming into a soda can, and the soda can is your product, they don't understand that CGI in itself is its own monster. And I would storyboard it, and I would get it to be the length of time that it needs to be. But once you pass it off to CGI artists, they charge their own price. Sometimes to make Optimus Prime change into a Coca-Cola and then have somebody snap the Coke and then drink it, that could easily run you $50,000 just for that scene. Not for the commercial, just for that scene.
Not even the average just storyboard animation between 600,000 and 700,000, but you're not even taking into account what it comes to when it comes to the final product, which can be anywhere from typically $1 to $2 million per episode.
Right. That's like I said, that it gets pretty expensive. So
how am I going to sell socks? How am I going to sell socks if I don't have $1 to $2 million? This is something that needs to be heard. It needs to be told. I need to sell these glow in the dark fucking socks, but I can't sell them because I'm not Bill Gates.
Exactly. So, it's complicated. I had one guy one time when I worked at SVM. I had one guy. He was a pest control guy, and he wanted a 3D bug, and then he wanted him to smash the 3D bug, and then the camera zoom into him, and he's talking to a customer. So basically, we have this fake, Bugs Life world where there's a roach, and then his foot smashes the roach, and then it cuts to him actually talking to a real customer. And he's like, "So how much is that going to run me?" And I said to him, well, just for the roach being crushed by your foot and then transitioning to the real world, probably about $10,000 for just 4 seconds. And it was just that little clip, and he's like, "Get out of here. There's no way." I'm like, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be about $4,000.
Is it a big market for new ideas being thrown across the boardroom? I guess you could say, is there a lot of people signing up to do new commercials and stuff like that? Obviously, we see new commercials, but they all kind of fall around the same products, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's, watching a TV show like The Simpsons or something that has kind of already been influenced through society so many times. There's not a whole lot of new stuff getting put out there. It's mostly the same stuff getting thrown back. Is that because of cost, you think?
It is. Like I said, I personally never handled costs. I never ever did. They had a whole, accounting department and all that, and people that would tell you how much it costs. But being that I am the first person that gets anything, or the first person that talks to a customer, you get a rough idea of how much it's going to cost after doing it for so long. You know what I'm saying? You can guesstimate how much it's going to be.
Yeah.
And the thing is my friends, they knew that I did animation, and they would tell people who had small businesses, and then they would get in contact with me, and they would say, I was looking to get a small little animation for my Facebook, Facebook commercial, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's nice. I'm not sure I'm the right guy for that." And they're like, "Well, so and so told me you do animation. I was wondering how much you would charge me to, just have my guy wave a little." And I said, "Okay, well, first of all, we have to get with a character design guy. That's already going to cost you minimum $600. He's like, "Well, my budget was $300. I'm like, "Yeah, then."
You might need to go down the road to Bob's Bargain Deals.
Yeah. So that was funny. As far as TV shows and stuff like that, I've never actually done TV shows. I've never did any sort of movie or anything like that. The closest thing I ever got to do to a TV show was me and my team during school, we did a small little skit for Jake and the Neverland Pirates. But other than that, I've basically done commercial work for people, people who could afford to buy big commercials and stuff like that. And funny story, actually. I'm sorry if I'm over talking here.
No, go ahead, dude. Like I said, it's a conversation. I want you to be open and just talk about things. I want to hear the experience, man. You're teaching me a little bit here.
Oh, awesome. we SVM Studios was actually going to do a TV show. We were supposed to do a TV show called The Chiblets. And our boss, Steve, was just such a bad person at managing money. He was just so bad at it that sometimes we didn't get paid. Like he wouldn't make payroll. And I was young and at the time, and I just wanted to impress my boss by being a good animator, by being, the kind of person you can depend on, because I wanted to gain so much experience. So a lot of times I would do work without really getting paid, and he would take advantage of that. So he put me as the head director in the storyboard department for the Chiblets. And the Chiblets was supposed to be something that Comedy Central was going to pick up, supposedly. I'm not there with all the big boys making all the deals, but supposedly that's what was going to happen. And the premise for the show, I can say it now because it's been so many years that, it's dead in the water. Supposedly, what was going to happen was that the premise of the show was that you take a dump, and that dump, once you flush it, it goes into this magical, mystical world, and that dump becomes you, and that's your chiblet. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
It's a very weird concept. I don't know if you ever seen Osmosis Jones, the movie.
Are you kidding me? That movie made me think about any type of supplement or any type of pill I put to fight a common cold. I always think of that guy, the pill, coming out with a gun, shooting these bacteria.
The guy. Well, the chiblet is like that. Like out of your feces, out comes a chiblet. You see what I'm saying? And they live in the chiblet world.
That would scare people from pooping.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I only knew the premise of the show. I didn't really know much other than we had a pilot episode, and I was working on the one pilot episode, and it was mostly just me working on the pilot episode because, I was I was really, really the only person that really wanted to work for experience versus pay, which now, with so many years under my belt, I don't do that anymore, and I can see what the old animators were talking to me about. But it was funny because I was working on it, and I thought, this is it. This is going to be, a show that, it's going to be on TV. I have my name out there and everything. And I was really, really, really getting into it. And then the next thing you know, we end up shutting down.
Shit.
And after shutting down, I went to go work at In Trouble Zone for a little bit, which was another animation studio, right?
Okay.
And it was around this time that I started changing my views and changing the way I handle the job that I do, the work that I do, and everything. Because it was during this time that I said to myself, you know what, I'm tired of this. The reason why I went into the Chiblets, even though it was a bad story, is because I wanted to be involved in telling stories. I wanted to tell stories. That's what I've always wanted to do. And during the Chiblets, the only reason I even took on doing the Chiblets was because Steve had promised me that I could get creative rights on the Chiblets. Kind of I'd also be able to make my own episodes and stuff.
Okay.
So that's why I even took on the Chiblets without really getting pay up front for it, because I was okay, this is my chance.
It's your shot. You can make it.
When I do get creative rights, towards an episode, those episodes will really shine. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I did it. And then when I worked at this other studio, I was back to square one, and I said to myself, I'm done with this. I don't want to deal with customers. I don't want to deal with the public. I was so enamored by the fact that, I was going to finally do a show where I would get creative rights and creative ideas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
be
able to do something.
I think you were taken advantage of in the original job you had, that you thought you were you were doing what
I definitely was.
You were doing what you loved, and somebody saw that as a chance to skip over pay because he felt like you were already getting paid just by being there. And you felt like you might have been kind of used in a way, which you were. And
I was. I was. Totally.
Which sucks, because then that gives you a terrible outlook on other companies that might actually give you a shot and might pay you reasonably for the work you do.
Right. Well, this leads into a funny story, which is why I'm telling this whole story, and I'm trying to sum it up as best as I can. But what ended up happening was, because Bryce told me, he said, when you go to the show, the guy really wants to know about stories, and everyone has their own story. I'm like, well, I have my story of how I started. I think he'll think this is funny, because I tell everybody, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's really super funny. What had happened was, after I worked at this other studio, I decided that I wanted to tell stories. I deeply, deeply wanted to tell stories. So I wasn't just going to write a story, though. That wasn't going to be me, because I had been in my profession long enough to understand that there was steps and rules to writing a story. So I had contacted one of my old professors, who was a writing professor of mine. I took a 2-week workshop while I was in school for script comprehension, because you kind of had to. And I had Professor Nagy, that was his name. And after the 2-week workshop, you're supposed to write a small 10-page script just to show that you understand script comprehension.
And also actually pulled something out of the class. I mean, you don't want to just get your degree in something, or take a class and then feel like you didn't accomplish anything or didn't understand what you were learning in that 2 weeks.
Right. But I felt as if I understood it so much that I during those 2 weeks, I actually wrote an entire movie. I wrote an entire 90-page movie instead of a 10-page script like I was supposed to. And I called it Metaman, Meddaman, Metaman. And you may find it on Google. There's a couple of small animations about it, right? Because I was like, oh, okay, now that I understand scripts, I'm going to be able to write Metaman. Okay. Which was just a small little project that I had. And I presented the script to my professor, and he read it, and I was waiting for the call. I was waiting for him to be like, Mike, this is beautiful. I loved it. It was great. This has a lot of heart and passion.
Did he shit all over it?
What?
Did he shit all over it?
Oh, my goodness. When I tell you that he shat all over it, because he didn't write me back. So I wrote him, hey, did you read my script? And he emailed me back my grade, and I got a C-. And I was like, but everyone else wrote 10 pages. I wrote 90. How the hell did I get a C-? And, he later wrote that, you tried, he called me Icarus. He said, you flew too close to the sun, bud, He's like, I only read 10 pages and I knew this is horse shit.
Damn,
like, oh
dude.
God.
Yeah, that's not cool of him, because you got to look at creativity in whatever form it chooses to expresses itself, whether it's through music, whether it's through art, whether it's whatever it is. Just because he didn't find it interesting doesn't mean it's not interesting to someone out there. I guarantee you, that show you were telling me, was it called The Chiblets? The Chiblets?
Chiblets, yeah.
Okay. That sounds like a show, like you're like, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. But I guarantee you 100% that you would watch it, and I guarantee you 100% Comedy Central would pick that up.
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy. He's the one that told me there's no such thing as bad ideas, just bad execution. So you are right, because I could tell you a story about 4 turtles who have a rat sensei, and they fight a
dude,
Shredder who has a Foot Clan.
If I ever have kids, I'm naming my 4 kids after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and freaking Donatello. Are you kidding me? Those names sound badass. How many times do you go into a classroom and everyone has the same name? Steve, Carl, Jeff, Matt, freaking Rob. No, I want something like, hey, when the teacher goes, is Beowulf in class? Is there a Beowulf? And then everyone's like, who the fuck is this kid?
Yeah. I'll tell you, to make this long story shorter, to make it actually a lot shorter, he was retiring in Florida. He said he was going to retire in Florida, and he gave me his personal email to contact him if I ever, if I was ever close. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Here's my personal email. We can chat with each other, right? And I still continued to write Metaman. I tried my best with a bunch of how-to books and everything, right? And I started writing other little stories. And then a couple months go by as I'm working for this other animation studio, and that's when I decide, hey, I really, 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 really don't want to do this anymore. And out of the blue, he hits me up on my email and says, hey, I retired in Fort Myers. Is that anywhere close to you? I said, yeah, that's basically where I live. And he's like, hey, if you want to go grab a cup of coffee, chat or whatever, he said, I'm down. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go to meet him, and I have all my scripts, right? And I give him my scripts. I'm there, and I'm like, here, can you please take a look at my scripts, blah, blah, blah. We have a cup of coffee and everything. And he calls me back 3 days later after we have a cup of coffee. I hand him my scripts and everything. And I said, so what do you think? And he's like, honestly, he's like, yeah. He's like, the format is wrong. Everything is bad. You've got no cores in your characters. You have no structure in your foundation. You have no... And he was really ripping it into it, right? And I was like, oh, man. He's like, but... you do have determination. So if you're willing to learn, I'll teach you how to write scripts the proper way. And I'm like, yeah, please do. And for a year and a half, he actually mentored me in his house on how to write scripts until I wrote the Blood Drawn Chronicles. And then he read it. And he's like, yeah, I got nothing left to teach you. So that's how I ended up doing the Blood Drawn Chronicles.
Dang. So the Blood Drawn Chronicles, this is your podcast now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I listened to a couple episodes, but kind of give me the rundown of what it really is.
You listened to episodes of The Black-Hearted Mr. White, right?
Yes, and I was wondering, I was like, because Bryce told me he had 12 seasons. I was like, damn, this guy's cranking out podcasts. And then I see it, and I'm like, wait a minute, his are only 8 minutes long, and they're like 5 episodes a season. He does it a little bit differently than I do. I have conversations that are hours long sometimes, and they go, I'm not even off my first season yet, and I won't be until I hit episode 100. And
gotcha.
And I'm like, I'm not saying that's not judging you at all. That's just saying, like, you have a different way of running it. So I was looking at it and listening to a little bit more about them. And just even hearing the dude talk, or who's the person that does the over narration?
Well, it depends on the Black-Hearted Mr. White or on the Blood Drawn Chronicles.
A Black-Hearted Mr. White, I think I listened to the most, and then I listened to a little bit of the...
Chuck Pons is the guy that does the narration.
Well, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this is pretty interesting. It's literally like an audio book. It's like being able to dive into a story. Now, are these all stories you created?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you start getting your thoughts about these types of things? Because you kind of, from what I heard about the Blood Drawn Chronicles of Mr. White, what time period does that take place?
It takes place in the 20s, in the Roaring 20s. And then Blood Drawn,
I thought
which is
so.
the first chronicle, takes place in the 1690s.
Yeah, okay. So I've heard some of the Blood Drawn Chronicles, because what I thought of when I heard some of what you were saying in that or what the story was about in that podcast was, I immediately thought, you said it's 1620s. I thought about medieval type stuff. I thought about the game Skyrim, the game Oblivion, the game like sword, shields, Romeo and Juliet style type stuff, fighting in the blood drawn streets. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this is interesting, because a lot of books nowadays they try and grab people's attention with, I guess, explosions. And it seems like every movie has to have one explosion in it, even The Lion King. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, wow, this is like some classic stuff, because I've read stories from people that are trying to be novelists and trying to uncover things, and just hearing the words and the amount of old style techniques, like so many kids nowadays, or just people nowadays, don't even know what a mortar and pestle is. If you don't know what a mortar and pestle is, let me tell you something. It was highly used in the realm of alchemy, and it's used to ground up herbs and these types of powders that were used back in the day to make potions, and now they're just seen as like stuff to grind down into powders and different supplements you can take to help maybe aid in sleep. But the fact that I was able to point that out, and an elderly person was like, "How do you know what a mortar and pestle is?" I'm like, "Cause I'm not an idiot. I'm not like against old style stuff. I would love to live back in the freaking medieval days, learning. It would suck. Obviously, there's some things that would suck about it, but you know how sick it would be not to worry about what someone tweeted on Twitter or doing something of this sort. You know how much fun that would be not to have any restraints of technology. Don't get me wrong. I see the benefits of it, much like it connecting me to you. But man, that's a life I'd like to kind of go back to. I would love to, go back to the Knights of the Templar and all these types of weird disorders and these types of people that walked around in these types of uniforms and types of things. I'm like, yo, that's so interesting. One of the time periods I'd want to dive into the most is around the time Leonardo da Vinci was creating these masterpieces and works of art that he was condemned for and seen as an idiot or an insane person. Like, we look at him now and he's been given a whole new outlook into history, seen as a giant inventor and creator with these contraptions that were way ahead of his time. But at that time period, he was scolded for his works. He was crafted and seen as an idiot in society. And I think it's amazing to see how far our thoughts and kind of feelings about things and kind of perspectives change throughout time.
Oh, definitely.
And when I'm sitting there listening to that, I guess that's from the Blood Drawn Chronicles. Is that what it's called? The 1620s one?
Yeah, the 1690s one.
1690s.
From the Blood Drawn Chronicles. The 1920s one is
I
Black
pictured
Mr. White, and that's a continuation. There are 4 chronicles in the Blood Drawn Chronicles. There's 4 chronicles. The second one is called the Black Heart of Mr. White. So that one only has 5 episodes because we're currently making it. It's supposed to have 10 episodes per season, and that's how we do our format. I write 10 episodes per season. And originally, the Blood Drawn Chronicles, we knew we weren't going to have sound effects and stuff. This was the Blood Drawn Chronicles was my first attempt at making podcasts. And I had just graduated writing school. I didn't actually, but I had just finished with my professor, so I knew how to write now. And I told my professor about this idea that I had, and I said, how do I write this in podcast format? And he said, well, he showed me how, and he said, okay, what you want to do is you want to write the entire story, not a season, because it's too big. You want to write the entire story. So before I even published episode 1, season 1, episode 1, I had all 12 seasons written. That way I could look at all my plot holes. I could fix them all out. I could format everything. Everything was right where it had to be. That was about all 12 seasons was about 1,841 pages. Yeah, that's how long I wrote that thing.
And it's crazy how funny that those turn into, like, you got everything written down on paper. Let's say you have a book of 500 pages or something. That'll take you hours. That won't even take you hours. That will take you a while to get through. But then you look at something as turning that into an audiobook, and it's like 5 minutes long. You're like, what the fuck? Like, all these months I've spent creating this beautiful work of art in this 500-page novel, and it turns into a 5-minute episode? Like, that makes you, it breaks your heart, but at the same time, you realize there's going to be an audience out there that's going to look and try and find your writings and find these types of formats that they can actually read and get their own interpretations of things. Because much like video games, books and stories, they're all an escape from your own reality, which we're all kind of seeking in the world.
Right. And one of the things about my podcast that's unique is that, my audio drama is unique, is that because I have my background in storyboarding, I know exactly how to time an episode to basically the second, within a tenth of the second. Like I'm only like 10 seconds off when I time an episode. And the episodes that are supposed to be that are 6 minutes long are because they're supposed to be 6 minutes long, because it's like an action episode that, I just want to capture the action and boom, you're done with the episode. The episodes that are like 8 minutes long in the Blood Drawn Chronicles, those are where you get the short episodes, is because I have a very, very strict message to tell, and those eight minutes, that's the episode, that's the message I want to tell goodbye.
Yeah.
Because people can't sit there and listen to an hour audio drama because they zone in and out without sound effects, without a lot of things going by, without a lot of. And when I first started, I didn't have all the stuff to be able to do that. But then after the 12 seasons and after so much support and everything, we ended up buying our own studio. And we made the second Chronicle. And the second Chronicle, let me tell you, the first Chronicle started off with only 6 voice actors, and I had to cycle them through. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And we did all 12 seasons with just 6 actors, and then we grew to have like 9 actors. in the Black Heart of Mr. White, and very minimal sound effects, very minimal. We were recording out of a closet in my house. But we got a bunch of support, and we got a bunch of donations and stuff like that from various fans, and we were able to build our own studio. Now the Black Heart of Mr. White has 34 actors. It has 2 sound engineers. It has a whole array of original music, original stuff, and each episode runs anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, you got a variety of options for people to look at.
Yeah, and the story all centers around alien vampires. We could say alien vampires. It's a little more than that. How do you sum up 12 seasons in 2 minutes? You really can't. But
exactly.
If I were to do it, I'd say alien vampires.
Why alien vampires?
Well, I'm summing up the story, and the quickest way I can do it is alien vampires. They're vampires from another world.
Oh shit! That sounds interesting in itself. I think creativity finds itself in all different forms, and whether you have a certain niche of people that are going to chase after the real writings and all these types of stories that are 500 pages long rather than just listening to a 5-minute episode. It's just all you're doing is expanding your horizons for different audiences.
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, you can't expect your product to get out there if you don't try to adapt to other forms of audiences. I mean, I'm not saying adapt what you want to do, what you want to kind of pursue. If you feel like writing vampire science fiction novels or these types of sci-fi type things, that's what you want to do. Don't change your way of doing it. Just adapt it to people that might have trouble reading. I know plenty of people that are very, very smart but have a terrible time understanding reading from a text that seem basically like idiots when they're just trying to read out loud. And those people might have suffered from something like dyslexia, but that gives them, an audiobook gives them the form or the ability to understand a book while someone is speaking it to them.
Right.
I mean, how do you expect a blind person to read a book? You can't.
Yeah,
he's not going to want to run his hands all over the pages and try and get those little bumps. I mean, you know how exhausting that would be for one of them. And so when you have an audiobook and a way of expressing yourself or expressing what you want to do out in another form, all you're doing is just you're creating more options for people to kind of pick up the little story. Because anybody that tosses a book down in front of somebody, it takes a very few limited amount of people that are actually going to open it up and start reading a little bit longer than the introduction and the first 2 pages. You have to, in that first 2 pages, you have to create an introduction. You have to create something that's going to capture your audience's attention, like a boom, a bang, a capitalization of a letter. And it's
and
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from my audience too. I really appreciate all of them, and they've been with me through the good times and the bad times. Believe it or not, there were some bad times. So.
What types of bad times?
Well, there's only really been one bad time because every time that a season came out, everyone loved it. Everything was great. Everyone criticizes everything but the writing. So I'm very proud of that. That nobody ever rips apart the writing. They just kind of rip apart the sound effects or whatever. Or
the
they didn't like
narration.
the way this actor did this, but they never ripped the writing. So I'm very proud of that. I haven't had any complaints with the writing. But,
dude, from the Chronicles of Mr. White that I heard, that guy, he said theory. I had to keep rewinding it because it sounded so like mysterious and also sexual. He was like, theory. I was like,
yeah.
I'm right now I'm listening to freaking what's his name, Neil deGrasse Tyson serenade me with the ideas of space that I can't comprehend.
We make sure that the hardest part of doing these shows is finding the right 2 main characters. And we have to find the guy that sounds like he could be like James Bond in an audio drama. And they both had to sound that way. And we were very fortunate to have the talents of Nelson Ventura, who plays Myrick, and Chuck Pons, who plays his son Malcolm in the next Chronicle. So we're very, very fortunate to find them. They're great people to work with. Jerry Lynn is another one. Jerry Lynn Clayton. She is J.L. Clayton. She is so much talent to work with too. And everyone is, that I'm not mentioning also that I work with is just tremendous talent, and it's a good privilege it's an honor for me to work with them is what I'm trying to say. It really, really is, and, like I said, we've had our ups and our downs, and our biggest down that we had was when we were trying to market the Blood Drawn Chronicles, the first Blood Drawn Chronicles. We reached out to many YouTubers and offered to pay them in order to do a review of the show.
I'll do one of your voice acting stuff for free, man. I'll tell you that much. It sounds interesting as hell. I'd love to be able to kind of toss in a character, dude. I mean, one of my things I wanted to do when I was a kid was be an actor. This is just another form of it, dude. I mean, you know how many impressions and these types of things I do just all around the house? Why not do it and get it out there? You know what I mean?
Right. What had happened was we had this one YouTuber, the Maven of the Eventide. She accepted to do a review. And we paid her to do the review. And we said, hey, we just want you to be honest. Tell us what you think. What do you think of the story and everything? That was for the Blood Drawn series. The Black Heart of Mr. White wasn't even thought of. And she's like, okay, thank you. And she's like, I'm going to listen to the show and give it my critique and everything. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much. So then the critique comes out, right? And I'm all happy because, oh, yay, we're going to get a review. And she tells me that the critique came out, and I'm like, thank you so much for, an honest review. Thank you so much for everything and all that. And guess what? The very first thing that I get, finding out that this show goes live, is I get a little message on my website at the time. I had live messaging, like you can write a comment, and then it would show up, and I could reply. And it was a message, and the message said, as a surviving rape victim, I find people who take matters of rape and run with it as jokes very, serious, and how dare you, and all this and all that. And I'm like, what the hell is this lady talking about, right? Because I had no idea what she was talking about. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you're the kind of reason that people like me are afraid to go out into the world, and we live inside our homes and our little huddles, and and all this and all that. She didn't. Serious topic, and you play with it. Well, it's not serious, and I hope you go to hell. And I was like, oh, geez.
She didn't interpret it correctly. She just probably listened to a minute of it and decided her justification on a minute of probably listening to it. She didn't dive into the whole world.
Because it's funny. The Maven had taken the Blood Drawn Chronicles, listened to 5 seasons, and decided to talk how it was toxic masculinity and anti-feminism, and how it was anti-all this and anti-all that. So she basically did it like a political, she put political views in something that wasn't there, and I had so many letters come to me. I had so many of them come to me where I was just like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this many people are writing it to me, things that I'm not even understanding why they're doing this. Like, people were saying to me, I have like a couple letters that they were saying to me like, oh, sexist pigs like you should die, and that's why you and your Emperor Trump and all this and all that. I'm like, oh my God. They were attacking me for voting for Trump, and I never even put publicly who I voted for. They just assumed that I voted for Trump. And I was like, what? Yeah, people were telling me to go kill myself, that I'm ashamed of humanity. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So then I listened to the review, and the review was all about just like toxic masculinity and all that. But what she fails to mention is that it takes place in 1690, and everybody talks down to women in 1690. It's just the way it was.
That's the way social class was.
Of how I am towards women. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's how society was back in the day. They didn't adopt anything modern that we have today.
That part, and I realized that everyone who was texting me didn't even listen to the show. They just listened to her review and decided to give me. They decided to give me, an opinion piece about how I'm a horrible human being because, of the situations that I write, because in the story, we get two women that were raped, and she in her review, she's like, and every time Myrick sees a woman, she just has to get raped. And I'm like, no, that's not what happens at all. That happened twice, And once was an attempt and once actually happened, and there were repercussions towards it. And Myrick understood and he felt bad and all this and all that. And there was more to take than just, you know what I mean? But she made it look like, oh, every time Myrick goes to a new village, a woman has to get raped. And I'm like, no, that's not it at all.
I think that's the problem with the world today. We make justifications based on other people's opinions, and we don't truly get to experience anything for ourselves. Someone can go and tell me you're the meanest guy in the world, but then if I can't just run with that, I have to experience you myself. You know what I mean? I have to be able to make my own interpretations of things. I think if more people took time to make their own interpretations and their own understanding of what people are, who they are, their own experiences in general, whether it's with food, whatever, if you go off someone other's based views, we're not 100% the same in the world. We don't all agree on everything. There's different things about us, whether it's genetics, mind, thoughts, any types of things of these sorts. So you can't rely on someone else's opinion to kind of change your perspective on things. I had to come to the conclusion that I guess Michael Jordan doesn't have AIDS, and it's that whole thing though. It's the fact that you have to experience and make your own interpretations on life. Taking someone else's viewpoint, saying, hey, I wouldn't eat that food, it sucks, and then living your life by that, thinking that food sucks, that's a terrible way of living. You have to go and experience that yourself. Whether those people that do cocaine say, bro, it gives you an energy rush, and then there's the people out there that are like, hey, it's a detriment. It's going to kill you later in life. You don't know until you truly experience it yourself and take your own justifications off thing. That's not a ploy or an advertisement for trying cocaine, but at the same time, it's not a reason that it's nothing against it. It's nothing for it. It's just you have to make your own assumptions and your own opinions about life. Too many people in the world today decide that, oh, he said this, then I guess that's what it is. It's like, why is his word law? Is it because you look up to him as seeing him as the all-knowing figure that has all the answers? Okay, well, maybe you should look at yourself and decide, maybe I should try it and make my own justification.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, the whole thing, at first I was sad, but then I took it as a joke, like, oh, these people are just nuts. Did it hurt? For a little bit, it did, but I knew what I was writing, and I knew that wasn't me, and I knew that you're going to offend people no matter what. So, she said I was sex worker shaming. I had never even heard of the term sex worker shaming, but and I wanted to write back. There's so many times I wanted to write back and defend myself. I'm like, don't even bother, man. It's not even worth it, because I'm sorry, it's 1690. Sex working was shameful. In 1690, no woman was like, "Girl, I'm a prostitute." Oh, you're moving up in the world.
Yeah, that's not
no woman was doing that.
Yeah, that's not a creative thing that you had an idea like, oh, all women back then were prostitutes. That's a kind of like a fact. A lot of women were downgraded in society. They it wasn't until like the 1900s, like the late 1900s, that they actually decided to get all these rights and look at them as people, not just a gender.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. And it got to the point where what it did teach me, because they got me so much that they actually got me, like, pulled from one site and all this and all that. It was such a big mess that I don't want to get into. But what it did teach me in The Black Heart of Mr. White is to put a warning in front of every episode. So every episode says warning. Everything that we say and do is just to dramatize the time period and has no effect on our personal, like, it doesn't coincide with our personal opinions of how we actually think here at the studio. This is just for fictional reasons. You know what I'm saying? And I can't believe I got to do that with grown people, but I guess I do,
It's for every person out there that's going to find enjoyment of something you create, there's someone out there. There's always going to be someone out there that has a problem with it, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And if you associate your work with someone that says something bad about it and gives you a terrible review, then you're living the wrong type of life. Because if you I guess, fused yourself and, throughout the world, everyone in society, me, you, it doesn't matter who, we all have fault with doing this, and that's caring what other people think about us. Whether you say you do or you don't, you truly do. Because we all have those quick second thoughts like, wow, he has this, he has that. Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? Do I look all right? Are they judging me? We all have these little thoughts that run through our heads, whether we notice it or not. And we're all just basically pulling out the ruler, trying to compare the sizes of each other's dicks. We're not truly caring about what's affecting us, what's a real thing. Is that person that I run into the store in that 5 minutes gonna affect my life later down the road? So I need to wear a certain shirt, I need to look a certain way? No. So why am I worried about it? We're society today is too conformed to caring what other people think about us and not being able to express ourselves in a way. I think it's getting better with time, but I also think it's something that's a major problem that needs to get focused on the most. Not the next iPhone 20. I find it funny that I can look at my great grandfather who grew up in the 20s, had that depression, had that real experience of not having something, and him hearing, where's my sandwich, to my great grandma. And she's like, this is the 2000s, make your own damn sandwich. And he's like, shit. But you see that, and you're like, women can do other things now too. And he's just like,
oh yeah.
He's like, yeah, I know. I just remember how it used to be. And a lot of people are stuck in that old style thinking, but being completely objectatory like that girl was writing that review at the time that she ended up changing her opinions was because she didn't get the full grasp of, I guess she thought it more of as an attack and got so defensive over something that wasn't supposed to be an attack. It was supposed to be a read, someone that can pick up something and understand what life was like maybe back in the 1690s. These types of things happened. We throughout history, we've done many things, whether you want to get into government conspiracies or not, that are some shady, shady shit. That's not fake, and that's not fake, like Area 51, that's not fake news. That's real stuff. It happens. But people are so willing to brush it under the carpet or look at it like that's not real because they're not willing to accept that somebody or something could be so crazy.
Yeah. One of the things I found the craziest is that she said I over-sexualized women. He's like, all the women are over-sexualized, just pieces of me. And I thought to myself, like, I find that complimenting because I was able to over-sexualize women in a podcast.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny. I really thought that was funny when she said that. I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess I did it with adjectives.
I mean, throughout history, our justifications on what we even structure ourselves now on is based on a shady foundation. It's all a rocky thing. We have kind of the wrong standings in a way, just so how we look at people and how we look at the world and how we kind of choose to act in the world today. We're more like, we're more comfortable.
No,
I mean, we're more comfortable living go to work, go to do this, and then not really going out and experiencing the world anymore, which kind of sucks because there's so many interesting things about it.
Right. No, definitely. If you ever listen to the Blood Drunk Chronicles, one thing that you'll learn in one of the I guess you could say lessons in the Blood Drunk Chronicles, or even in the Black Heart of Mr. White, is that morality is a social construct that's ever changing. What's good today will be bad tomorrow. What's bad tomorrow will be good today. What we consider to be morally right wasn't morally right 200 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, our opinions and thoughts change on things, so nothing's ever really correct. Nothing's ever at its final product. Throughout your life till the end of your days, when you finally come off this earth, we're constant works in progress that are never finished.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like I say, I try, because it is true that when you write, you put a little piece of you in the characters and everything, and I try to make characters that are so not me that because I'm a totally different individual than say Myrick or Malcolm, and some of the things that I believe are not what my main characters believe. And the reason I did that is because it makes for much better writing when you don't agree with your main character So you can learn to see that point of view. Then when you do agree with your main character, and then basically you're just writing you in a story. And it's very complicated to do because a lot of people tend to put themselves in their main character. You know?
Yeah,
So,
I agree with you 100%, dude. A lot of people, like with movies and stuff, they choose to, I guess, we all have a favorite character. We all have someone that we don't like in a movie. We all just make justifications and opinions and personalizations on things that we watch and things that we enjoy. And it's important. You have to create a structured character to give your story more bolstered, I guess, influence on other people.
yeah.
And is this something you want to end up like pursuing? Do you want to do this for this is obviously it's your passion to do these types of things, but do you want to turn this into a career, like being able to survive off this?
Well, it's already a career that I'm surviving off of. So yes, I do. Yeah, it's actually a lot of fun. It really is. A lot of people have asked me. They're like, so is this something that you want to eventually make money out of? And I tell them, I am actually making money off of it. So it's a lot of fun. It's great. It really, really is. And I love it so much. I really, really do. I love all my fans, and I love, I love, how can I say this without sounding so like I conquered the world, because vanity is the enemy of humanity. But I'm humbled. I really am humbled because I'm not by any means a millionaire or anything like that. But I'm able to just create stories. I'm able to talk to my fan base. I'm able to have do what I love doing. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to do what I love doing, and I've reached that point, and I think I'm pretty happy where I am as far as my life right now. Now, in 10 years, it could change. I would like it to be – my next step is to make it to where it's something where I can afford to have a family. Because right now, it pays enough to be able to afford me being me, one guy, in an apartment, is able to afford that. I'd like to be able to afford a family income, I guess you could say. So that's my next step,
Yeah, you have a list and you have a plan of things, and that's more than a lot of what people have. And anybody that wants to take the time and look up your podcast and look up some of your stories and stuff, it's definitely an interesting find, dude. And I appreciate you sitting down with me for this hour and being able to talk and kind of interest me a little bit on what you do. First of all, in the works of 2D animation, but also your fascination with what you're doing now. And I think it's going to go everywhere upwards, dude. I think the sky's the limit, man. Anywhere you choose to take it, whether you choose to take it down the road or stop right here, I think that anybody that takes the time and willingness to look up your podcast, what is it called? The Chronicles of Mr. White?
No. The first one's called The Blood-Drawn Chronicles. The second one's called The Black Heart of Mr. White. And I recommend that everybody listens to The Black Heart of Mr. White because you don't need to listen to The Blood-Drawn Chronicles. You can. And it's fun. It's 12 seasons. They're short seasons, but it's still 12 seasons. But we made the Black Heart of Mr. White its own chronicle. Even though it is the second chronicle, it's also its own stand-in chronicle. So, and it took us a while to build that, too. That was a little difficult to see how we could do it to where it ties in, but it could also stand on alone on its own. So,
Dude, I appreciate you taking the time to be on my podcast, man. And, I'd love to have you and Bryce on at the same time and be able to talk about a few things. I'm pretty sure he says you can go off on some rants on some conspiracies I kind of want to hear a little bit about with him on there to kind of help, I guess, prove some points on my side too. But, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time to be on my podcast, man. And I hope to have you on again soon. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robbie.